Well, hello there. My name is Dave Bila. I want to welcome you to this new edition of News and Views broadcasted by Access LaPorte County on Public Access TV Channel 99. We are a weekly public opinion program addressing local, state, national topics and issues of interest to the Michigan City and surrounding areas. Opinions are the views and the responsibilities of making the comments and do not necessarily represent or reflect or represent the views of this program or its co-producers, Larry, Curly, and Schmo. We will adhere to broadcast rules, but absolutely no one's First Amendment rights of freedom of speech or freedom of the press will be either muzzled nor denied. Any unauthorized use of the accounts, descriptions, and events of this program without the express written consent of the three amigos is strictly prohibited. We hope you enjoy the program, the discussion, and the participants. I've got nothing to say today, but I know Bob does. And you know what it pertains to, Bob?
Football. Sports. History of Indiana in terms of football. This probably is one of the more significant weekends that the state of Indiana has ever had in terms of football teams, because we've got two teams that are doing very well. In fact, in the national setup in terms of the playoff picture, Indiana is seeded number 5 and Notre Dame is seeded number 6. But in addition to that, if you look at the betting, Notre Dame is favored to beat Indiana, if that would go through the same way. So, very interesting situation. Now, I have to apologize to Tony, because I told Tony last week that I thought it was a 16-team deal. They talked about it, but actually it's still 12 teams, which means that there are 4 conference teams that will get a bye on the first round. That seems to me a little bit unfair, and they really do need to go to this 16-team alignment, but that's the way it works out best with a 12-team alignment. So, if whoever wins the Big Ten, now the Big 18 Conference Championship, will get a bye, and probably that will be Oregon, unless something happens unusual in the next 2 weeks, because there are generally 2 games left.
But in the Big 8, 10, 18, it wouldn't matter, because 3 of the teams could get the bye that are already up ranked anyways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
IU, Ohio, and
Well, no, it's conference championships.
yeah, but in the conference championship, one of those 3 teams will probably win it.
Yes.
And they're already ranked.
Yeah. So, okay. A little bit about Indiana. They are the last team in the Big Ten to have a 10-0 season. This was the first time in their history that they had a 10-0 season. The best that they did in terms of anything like that was 1945, and in 1945 they had 9 wins, 0 losses, but 1 tie. So they didn't quite make 10-0, but they did win the Rose Bowl that year, and hopefully the Big Ten team will be able to do that again. A little bit about Ohio State. Obviously been a major player in college athletics and certainly in football for the last 50 years. We will be playing at Ohio State. The stadium itself apparently seats about 100,000 people. It is called the Shoe, and the reason they call it the Shoe is because it's shaped in the form of a horseshoe, with one end open at one end, but the rest of them are all seats. And the tickets right now for this game on the 50-yard line, $1,000 plus, and up in the cheap seats, I'm told that the cheapest seat in the house is a little over $200. And I got that information about a week ago. So as a result of that, assuming that the seats have been bought out, it's still going to be a lot more expensive. Now, in terms of Notre Dame, it's also a very historic football game this weekend, because Notre Dame plays Army. And the history of this game in terms of sports goes all the way back to 1913. And what made the Army Notre Dame game so eventful in 1930 was the introduction of the forward pass. And I unfortunately have forgotten the name of the quarterback who was throwing the pass, but the catcher of that pass was Knute Rockne, who later became one of the more famous coaches throughout college football history in his term at Notre Dame. Some of the more important games that have been played. Probably the one that got the most notoriety was the 1924 October game against Army. This game is being played in November, but it would be the 100th anniversary of that football game. It was played at the Polo Grounds in New York, which was the home of the New York Giants, a baseball team, which left to go to San Francisco. But the key to that game was that there was probably the most important sports writer in the country seated at that game. He wrote for the New York Herald Tribune, and his name was Grantland Rice. And he started out his column about the game by saying that it was a blue, gray, and some people will throw in there dark, October afternoon, rode the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, coming out of Revelation, and there's a number of different interpretations of this, but the four horsemen of the apocalypse are war, disease, famine, and pestilence. He then went on to say, but the real four horsemen were Crowley, Layden, Miller, and Steldrawer. That was the backfield of the four horsemen. Now, how this thing got such notoriety, these things happen in history, was that on Monday, when the team had gotten back from Notre Dame, the assistant, who was a student to Knute Rockne, took a picture. And there's different interpretations of this. Either he took the picture or he got the South Bend newspaper to come in and take the picture. One of the two. But anyway, the picture, and he went down to a livery stable, which at that point rented out horses. This will tell you how far back it was. And he got four horses, and he brought them into the playing field, and they mounted the backfield on the top of the four horses, took the picture, and it was published in the local newspapers. And suddenly, somehow, this thing got spread clear throughout the country because people picked up on it. And that team will be forever known as the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame, and that's 100 years ago. There are a couple of other historic games that were played. One was the 1928 game, which when Ronald Reagan played the role of Knute Rockne in the Knute Rockne story, he talked about one of the famous speeches, and that famous speech was Win Run for the Gipper. It was 1928 when Notre Dame was playing Army, and they were behind at the half, and this was probably Knute Rockne's most unsuccessful season, and he was saying, can't you please get out there and win one? And it came out, win one for the Gipper. And the Gipper was George Gipp, who Knute Rockne at that point said was he thought the best football player that Notre Dame ever had. Obviously, they went out, they won that game, and it will forever be known as a win one for the Gipper game. In 1944, Army won probably their best game they've ever played against Notre Dame, 59-0. Huge score. But they had a combination of that time known as Mr. Inside and Mr. Outside, and Glenn Davis and Doc Blanchard. They also played in the 1946 game, which was a 0-0 tie, in another one of the famous historical football games. Both coaches were back from military service. Frank Leahy was coaching for Notre Dame. Earl Red Blake was coaching for Army. And as a result of that, both these coaches have at one time or another were coaches of the year. Frank Leahy actually lived in Long Beach. He and his family lived in Long Beach, and his kids went to St. Mary's High School. And they also went to St. Mary's Grade School. So as a result of that, Michigan City, there's a lot of people in Michigan City that were well familiar with that game. It was a 1946 game, a 0-0 tie. And most people who analyze college football will tell you that there were more All-Americans on the field that day than at any other football game in the history of college football, from Army and from Notre Dame. So that's my little history of what's going to take place tomorrow when Indiana plays Ohio State and Notre Dame plays Army. And you can think about the history of all this, Indiana having been a very historic athletic program in terms of basketball, but just starting out in terms of football. And they have just given their coach, Curt Cignetti, a new contract, which looks like it will be very favorable in terms of pay, but they need to keep this guy because the revenue that you gain from college athletics is huge in the football and the basketball area. And so when you're watching one of these games tomorrow, you can think about the history of this sport in terms of these colleges. That's all I have.
I've got a question, Bob. If some individual out there in the viewing audience had a stopwatch and he replayed this program, replayed your initial segment of a conversation, you initially opened up about IU and you gave them kudos.
Yeah.
And then you spent about 45 minutes discussing the longevity of Notre Dame and the Four Horsemen and so on and
5
so on.
minutes.
Who do you really support between IU and Notre Dame? You spend more time on Notre Dame than what again, let's give
Notre Dame has a history.
Who cares what they've done in the past? They play the lousiest teams. They play the lousiest schedule throughout the year.
I realize-
and you have a credible state university that our tax dollars go to support, and you're putting Notre Dame over this IU.
I realize that you came from LaPorte, which has a history of not being able to win in athletics, but there are many people from Michigan City who remember Frank Leahy because his kids went to school here.
You're missing the point, Bob.
No, I'm not.
talking. You are an IU graduate. You support the college that you graduated from.
I support-
You're spending. What happened? Did you apply for Notre Dame and they kicked you out?
I never had the grades good enough to get in.
Okay, but you had the good enough grades to go to IU and have that background. I'm just saying you support the program that you grew up with, just as I support the program that I grew up with.
Just like I support Purdue, who's a loser this year.
Now,
Tony, we feel sorry for you.
But they've been a winner many times in the past.
no, they
That sounds like my election.
they were pretty good with Drew Brees, weren't they?
Anyway, I got some questions for Bob.
Okay.
I got some questions for Bob. Okay, Newton rocked me when he came in because that's way past my day. But he was pretty young in the Four Horsemen days.
Yeah,
If he played in 1913, he would only be like 30 years old as a coach.
Yeah.
So he was a pretty young coach back in the...
He is the youngest. He is the coach with the most wins, percentage-wise, in the history of Notre Dame.
And then I could bring it back to Dave's side and bring it back to today. So if the Four Horsemen were in today's world, and it picked up like firestorm like it did, or what do we say now on the internet, it became live on the internet. Well,
Yeah.
If it became, I can't think of the word now, then how much money would they have made in name, image, and likeness?
Oh, it's been huge.
Could you? Because that's where the funding source is. And I still predict in 3 to 5 years, we're going to see this implode in the worst way we've ever seen. And now I do agree the student athletes should get paid something because the universities get hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But the road we're going down right now with name, image, and likeness is a road that we will not be happy with in 3 to 5 years because there's no good that's going to come out of this. People like the Four Horsemen, if they went viral, and there will be a group of people or 1 or 2 student athletes in some sport that will go viral. And I predict that there will be 1 or 2 student athletes who get very smart and realize they're not as capable as some of these athletes are in being professionals. They're second tier athletes in the NCAA. And they will realize that I might not be the best player, but I can be the most viral player. And I know this will happen because we've seen it happen with the Bulls and Dennis Rodman. When he became in the Bulls, even though he helped out a lot, we won because of him, he was viral, and he made more money off the court than he would ever make on the court. And some of that got him to stay on the court. There's going to be a couple student athletes in the NCAA that will realize this. And they might not be the best athlete, but they will have such a viral name, image, likeness, momentum that you can't stop, and the coach will never, ever take them off the court.
Yes.
Or the playing field.
Well, there is one thing that's going on right now. Now, I won't say that it's been passed yet, but I know they're really talking about it. And that is the name recognition. And it goes like this. If a student athlete, if the name on a jersey that they sell, or if he's autographed a football, or if she's autographed a volleyball, let's say, they will get the fee for that autograph. They will get the fee for the name on the jersey. If they've autographed a football, they will get the fee for the autograph of the football. Not for playing, but for their name and their likeness.
But okay, that's a good question too, because some of these teams, and I watched an IU basketball game, they're already playing basketball.
Yeah.
They don't have names on their jerseys. Does Notre Dame have names on their jerseys either? Some teams do, some teams don't.
No, it's not the name on the jersey.
They have just a number.
It's the number. But when they sell them, They put
Put the name on there.
Yeah, and with the number.
So if the Four Horsemen went viral as they did back in 1924, we will have somebody like that some year, next coming years, and it'll be so viral, their name, image, likeness contract will carry so much weight, the coach and the university will dare not take them off the playing field or the court. I guarantee you it would happen. It's going to happen real quickly. That's the road I think we're going down with name, image, likeness, that we are going to pay the price, and it's not going to be good.
Well, what I see with this image, likeness, and so on, if these young men, wherever they came from,
And young women.
if they are so prestigious, if they are so good, they should pay for their own education at whatever college they want to go to, and all of again, in our way of life, the almighty dollar prevails. If they're so confident in their ability, then eliminate the scholarships altogether. There's no need for scholarships. Let the fair market price determine the eligibility of the student athlete. Because what you've got is, you've got the prominent individuals out there. For example, there's a 7'9" freshman basketball player that has been redshirted. He plays someplace down in Florida. He's from Canada. 7'9", okay, and he's been redshirted on this basketball team. Maybe it's Miami or whoever it is, someplace in Florida. He's got the world by the yin-yang, being 7'9", because he just stands there and he doesn't even have to jump to dunk the ball.
But you got to have a point guard to get the ball into him.
If college athletes go to that point,
they are.
He should.
Oh, they are.
He should, rather than being recruited to this school, the school should again ask him, "Will you come? But you're going to have to pay your own education." If that changes across the board, then this likeness, image, and everything else is going to change.
That's a great point, and maybe Bob can answer. So, if the student athletes would play for major teams in the NCAA or any college or any high school, and they would get free tuition and books and whatever else, and room and board, which is very expensive. But now we have this name, image, likeness that they are going to get compensated. Here's a question for you, and boy, you made a good point. Can the university now ask them to pay their tuition, their room and board, and their food? Because now they have money to pay for it, because they argued, I get money for name, image, likeness, which is a fair argument. But now should the college say, okay, here's your bill for tuition, room and board, and books and everything else?
Because that's discrimination. That's discrimination to the individual who might not have the athletic prowess to extend his or her educational situation. What I'm just saying is, if you want a college degree, whether you're 6 foot or 7'9" or 4'5", you pay your way to go. And if you're paying for the opportunity to play basketball at an elite college, well then so be it. But you paid your way. You didn't. There's no free lunch in this world. But when you look at athletics, there's a free lunch for the capable people, and the other free lunch doesn't exist because the rest of the people are on a breadline.
But
education is more important than being 7'9" and getting a free ride to a college. I don't.
Time out. What those elite athletes are saying is, look at the money the school is already making over me.
Generating, yes.
Yes. And as a result of that, they're saying we have more than compensated the school because of our physical abilities.
That's discrimination to the young kid who isn't 7'9".
It's also
and he wants or she wants an education. They deserve an education. Our tax dollars are subsidizing these colleges that are recruiting these kids.
These kids,
the government sends them money.
Wait a minute. These kids are making a lot of money for those schools.
Then let them pay. If you want a gallon of gas at a gas station, you think the gas station is going to give you the gallon of gas on your looks or on your height or on your determination? They're going to. No, it's not right.
Well, it's not right. It's that movie stars, football players, now these are pros, go into a restaurant, sit down and you make an order, and they don't have to pay for it because The restaurant wants them in there just to take a picture.
That's
and show
but
that
that's a roadblock to this argument. This entire show has been built on specific issues. One of the issues is education. We want to educate these kids to the best of our ability, the impressionable minds. But because this kid took maybe hormones when he was 4 or 5 years old to grow to 7 foot 9 inches when he's 17 or 18 years old, that is not right.
I can tell you how that works. He didn't take hormones. His parents kept him out of school and started him in kindergarten when he was 6 or 7 years old, so that he would have a advantage by the time he got to be a junior or a senior in high school.
Yeah, he was almost 6 foot tall when he was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point, and it doesn't matter what collegiate sports or national sports you're in, because these students need to realize that the odds of them going pro are tiny, and the odds of their pro season are even smaller. So their education is far, far more important than any of these sports or any name, image, likeness they're getting, because their education is going to carry them until they're 60, 70 years old, not until their body's broken down at 35 years old and they can't hardly even get up out of a chair anymore. And I think that's where most sports fail our populace and our students, because they don't realize
it boils down to priorities.
This is something the NCAA is going to have to work with and talk to them about it. Now, we've got quite a few situations where there's been so many of these now that what's happening is these guys, well, I'll make Herschel Walker an example. He's taking classes now at the University of Georgia because he got drafted when he was at the sophomore level, for crying out loud, played in the NFL for about 10 years. Now he's going back to the University of Georgia to get his degree, and he's paying for it. He can afford to pay for it at this point.
And there was a Notre Dame student, pro, that did that too. He went back and he finished his college degree because he realized, my body's shot at 35. I can't hardly physically get around. I shouldn't have I should have made my education first instead of pushing my way through pro. Because if you talk about these salaries, and everyone talks about salaries or name, image, likeness, they're not getting all that money. There's agents, there's taxes. People taking their money, there's taxes, so they might think, oh, I got this $10 million, and really you whittle it down to what, 2 or 3 million maybe, which is a lot of money, but they're not getting that money unless they're smart and educated and they invest their money and they grow their money instead of just wasting it away. That's their opportunity that I think the colleges and the educational system is missing. These student athletes need to understand the future past their college, their educational or their pro degree, and realize that money can be invested and make money and finish their education, and then they can live a happy life at 70, 80, 90 years old.
Well, we've got a situation at the college level. If you ever get a chance, go back and you pull up whatever team that you want. Let's pick Notre Dame for an example. You pick up their roster, and you see on their roster how many 350-pound kids they got and how many 370-pound kids they got. And there's a couple kids that are almost 400 pounds that are linemen. Now, these kids that are 400 pounds will take up 2.5 seats in an airplane.
They're monsters. They're monsters.
The fact of the matter is, once they graduate from college, where are they going to go? At 400 pounds. What's this Kennedy? What's he trying to do? Is he's trying to make people eat healthy? How is it that we've got, if you look, again, don't take my word for it, look at the rosters of these football teams and look at the size of the linemen, and then look at college pros and look at the size of their linemen, what they've got. The fact is, we've got a lot of overweight people in this world.
Well, you got some big dudes, and I can tell you, if you've ever been around the Secret Service, like when George Bush came to South Bend and hung around there, those dudes, that's where those guys are. They are huge. And they are also really just human shields for presidential candidates. Again, that's a small number of people that go to the Secret Service, or I hate to say it, they're security, or they're bouncers, or they're in Vegas or somewhere, because you need somebody big to be that kind of person.
We have gotten a lot bigger. Now, I'll just throw this example out. You guys can do with it whatever you want. But on that 2014 team, the one that we talk about.
How big were the Four Horsemen?
The entire team, nobody weighed over 162 pounds. The entire team.
So we're growing them bigger.
We're growing bigger.
Now I want to switch. It's kind of a segue, but not because it was in the news today locally that, and we're going to go to the city of LaPorte here, that these students or whoever needs this money needs to realize they got to go their whole future and they got to invest and grow their lives. But we go back to a accounting procedure, and in the city of LaPorte they had a venue there, Civic, very nice venue, right? And it came out in an article today that when Tom Dermody got elected mayor, he told his people to run the Civic and make it, at a minimum, make it pay for itself. He'd like it to be profitable. Well, it looks like it's going to pay for itself, and that meant that the mayor of the city of LaPorte has got an extra $300,000. So they were spending $300,000 through their budget on the Civic, which is a beautiful venue, and they just weren't utilizing it. Can Michigan City do something like that? We have a couple beautiful venues in the Old Elston.
Well, Old Elston, thank you for worming me into that. Just recently, I believe it was September the 3rd, the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission suggested, and it's been voted on and it's been approved, to grant the Michigan City area schools $3.4 million for the rehabilitation of the Elston complex because of the city of Michigan City, in conjunction with the mayor's office, they want to make that a institutional and a hub of something.
Yes.
And my only concern with that was, well, that's all well and good, but make sure you also hire janitors to maintain the building, because too often we create these gigantic opera houses and so on, and there's nobody to maintain it, and there's no budget to subsidize the maintenance, and eventually the building gets torn down like a coal elevator is on Highway 12. That's going to be demolished shortly because I guess the railroad,
it's been just outmoded.
Yeah, it's been identified to be torn down. But the fact of the matter is, think the project all the way through before you actually open the door on a new project, because there are a lot of pitfalls, and too often these pitfalls materialize after the fact, and everybody's got their arms up in the air. Well, how are we going to handle this, and how are we going to handle that? How you handle that is through creative thinking, and you allow a step and a procedure to follow all the way through to make these things happen. We have the Elston complex that has a gymnasium in it. Now, who is responsible to maintain a gymnasium? Well, it's the YMCA. Well, you go into the gymnasium and you talk to the people there, they say the floor isn't habitable, but yet, I remember when they put in a new floor in the Elston gym. There was nobody to maintain, nobody over a specific period of time that maintained that floor, and it's now in a, it is not up to standards according to the Indiana High School Athletic Association, even though it's not a, it's a 96-foot floor. It's 4 foot short. It's always been that way, and during Doug Adams' time, and nobody ever changed it. But the fact of the matter is, preliminary thinking.
Didn't want it changed. There's a reason Michigan City Elston holds the second longest.
Are you implying that Michigan City was cheating because they were playing on a shorter court?
They're using it to their advantage.
No, that court was grandfathered in. That court was grandfathered in. It was built by the
WPA.
WPA. Yes, and as a result of that, it was grandfathered in.
Yeah, it's not. Maintenance is the issue. But when I go back to what Mayor Dermody does in Civic, he made a charge, and he got the right people to fill that venue up with events.
Correct.
And bring the money in. And we talked about this so in my helping of the fairgrounds in LaPorte County. And if you look at Porter County and Lake County, and Porter County is really better than anybody, they find somebody to fill those venues up with events. And we always talk about, if we hire somebody to do it, can they fill the venue up, and we put them on the payroll? And I think, no. Let's hire somebody like 2 or 3 people, and say, if you have an event, you get a cut of the event. If you don't bring in the event, you don't get any money. So let's pit some people against each other to start bringing events into the beautiful venue of Elston, the old Elston gym. We've got twice as much as the Civic does. We have a gym, and we have an auditorium, and they're gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And if we could bring events in there.
But the biggest gym of all is the one at the old Rogers High School, and that one at one time was either the second or the third largest venue in the state of Indiana.
But there is a high school going on there. We had the Elston building, which I think can open itself up to venues on the weekends, maybe on the weekdays, to fill that place up with events. And the person that brings that event, they're going to look for an event that makes money, because you can have events and concerts that you lose money, because the concert person wants X dollars. If you don't sell X tickets, you still got to pay them X dollars.
The Democrat Party has found that out.
So you've got, if you're going to run somebody who's running on a commission will make sure
My
that
two Democrat friends here are
event-
well aware of that.
the event is paid for, and we could start making these self-sustaining, which it looks like the city of LaPorte has found a way to do it, and that $300,000 sure can go a long way to other things Michigan City needs, instead of trying to not just maintain a center or some sort of area, to actually get it to grow. And now we're just paying, and hopefully we fix the floor and and the roof doesn't start leaking.
Now, it's my understanding that, again, the culinary and the cosmetology program of the A.K. Smith Center is still going to stay in place. The physical structure of the Elston classroom concept is what they're transitioning over to. And so some of this $3.4 million is going to renovate certain things. Not necessarily renovate the theater, because, again, just what Tony was saying, it could be utilized by somebody to put on some type of performances if there was a structure in place. But normally what we see here in this community, that everybody has grandiose ideas, but they forget about structure. And they implement these structures, and then by the time 4 years traverses, $3.4 million has not set aside any money for maintenance, has not set aside any money for improvements and so on. And eventually the Elston complex will be tore down, just like that coal elevator was on going to be on Highway 12.
Well, I'll give you another thought that they could look at, which is turning the old Elston School into a technical school entirely, because you got the A.K. Smith Center right there. You could institute the type of classes that we used to have in tech schools. Remember, Hammond had a technical high school. It was called Hammond Tech. Indianapolis had a technical high school called Indianapolis Tech. You could do the same with that Elston complex. Now, right now, the people that go to that, the A.K. Smith Center, the technical part of it, come out of the county, and that includes Michigan City. But I think you could really widen that situation in getting students out of the county and building that up, which would be another positive for Michigan City.
But I think we've extended already, because Angie and her efforts for that particular Elston complex has already been moving ahead of the game to make something happen. Plans are in place.
Well, that doesn't mean we couldn't have a technical high school in there.
Maybe in the area of where culinary and cosmetology, and because there is a separation between the buildings, the Elston complex.
That's the beauty of Elston that I don't think is completely underutilized.
Correct.
It's so modular. We could have a technical area. We could have the gym being used for something separate than the auditorium. We could have the other gym, which has the pool in it, which is already being used by the Y, and we have another. The Elston school is set up perfectly in a modular sense that you can segregate and separate different areas for different uses, even at the same time. That you can make sure people only go to the auditorium and the other hallways are closed off. And you only go to the gym, or you go to the new gym. We already do that. We can have all that. And I'm going to go with Bob here. If we're going to spend $3.4 million, what's 5% of $3.4 million?
Yeah, about $150,000, $160,000.
About $160,000 per year. Wouldn't it be wise to put $3.4 million in a fund and spend the interest of $150,000 a year? Then you know what you got for perpetuity? And then we could get something done with that amount of money, or we just sink $3.4 million and hope everything works out.
Here we have at that complex 3 basketball courts.
Yeah.
Those 3 basketball courts could be put under the purview of the park department for a basketball program in the wintertime. Again, positive thinking, but they're talking about classroom space for the homeless, and we need this particular social agency to be governed under this particular brand. The fact of the matter is, let's utilize the property for some good. Basketball doesn't last the entire year, but let's establish a contract with the park department to allow that facility to be utilized during basketball time only, maybe 3 months of the year, 4 months of the year, to have some recreational activities that would benefit the youth of Michigan City.
I think you divide up the space and you use the capitalistic world and you say this space can be utilized for these things. It's open to any individual private promoter, and you will pay us this much for use of the space, but we can schedule for this space, whether it's the auditorium, the old gym, the new gym, the pool, and you can have, these weekends are open. If you'd like to promote a concert here, we would require this much money. You can take whatever's left, and good luck. And we could do that.
But I believe the YMCA has already got their foot in the drain right now at the complex. You know, they're maintaining the pool facility, and they're also utilizing the gym facility. The fact of the matter is, how did they allow the YMCA to get their foot in the door if they're not paying the piper to a certain extent?
Well, that would increase the price, and then the YMCA, which does a great job, would have to find a way to increase their revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to pay for those buildings, and I think they are sitting there open and ready for money. We now have proof in the city of LaPorte that you can make this happen.
Now, one of the things that a lot of people might not necessarily know, but the Civic Auditorium used to have a bowling alley in the basement.
I didn't know that.
Okay, it used to be either I believe it was an 8-lane, possibly a 12-lane bowling alley. Because I remember back when I was a boy. Again, I'm long in a tooth to a certain extent, but there used to be bowling available in the basement of the Civic Auditorium. They also used to be tennis courts on the south side of the Civic.
Yep.
But those tennis courts were replaced by grass to graze the geese in LaPorte.
They might come back now. It's a revenue generator. You know, the government doesn't have to be just spending money. We can generate revenue with the help of the private side.
And who was the impetus behind the development of improving the Civic, if not Dermody? Maybe we need that same impetus here in Michigan City. When you look at 77% of the occupants of the Michigan City area schools are eligible for free or reduced lunch, maybe our priorities are going in the wrong direction. Maybe our priorities would be to take a list of all of these people who are on the handout roll and find out what they're qualified in doing. And they may have a skill that we could capitalize on. And that skill, whether it's automotive or whether it's culinary, create some form of employment for these qualified people who have a skill that could contribute to the community. Right now, the way I see it is you've got these individuals living off the trough. They have absolutely no other incentive other than wait to the end of the month until their next welfare check comes. The fact is, we have to change the mindset of the community to say, hey, we all have to do something. Take a new attitude, get out of your basement apartment of doing absolutely nothing 23 hours a day, and get yourself a job. Make gainful employment of yourself.
Well, that goes back to doling out the welfare, and we had this under Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton, and the Speaker of the House at that time, and you had to do a certain amount of work.
That's right.
In order to get welfare, and that probably is something we have to go back to, but we also have to have the training available, and I keep stating this. You're going to have to be able to train these people. You're going to have to get them into these programs. But the first thing you have to have is the programs to get them into.
Well, maybe this $3.4 million that's being pushed through the Redevelopment Commission, maybe a portion of that could be set aside for physically training the people here in Michigan City to get a job. Right now, if there's no push to push forward of these 77% of the people who are eligible for free or reduced lunches, if there's no impetus to move them forward, they're going to continue, and Michigan City is going to be just twiddling its thumbs for the next 40 years.
Michigan City is not twiddling it. See, this is where you guys don't get the right impression. Michigan City is not twiddling its thumbs. If you go north from 11th Street to the lake, that entire area is really growing. and it's going to start to grow not only on the east side, which is where it is now, but also on the west side when you get rid of the prison. It's that part of Michigan City that's south of 11th Street right now, which I think eventually will probably go down to Barker Avenue or Barker Road.
Midtown.
It's coming. That will be a very positive area. Michigan City is not one situation, and we're failing even on this program to recognize that. It's gotten to the point where you have very low-priced houses, if you can get one, because people from outside are buying them up.
Oh, yeah.
Very expensive houses north of 11th Street. Unbelievable in some cases what they're paying for them, but they are. And as a result of that, you've got a very growing area, very small but growing, and you've got an area which unfortunately is being left behind.
Okay, I have in front of me right here, resolution adopted October the 10th, 1983, establishing one of the first enterprise zones in the state of Indiana. We were one of the first 7 enterprise zones established in the state of Indiana. The authorization, it was introduced by Evelyn Baker, signed by Ron Canola, and the mayor at the time was Cliff Arnold. The intent of the enterprise zone designation was to take an area that had cessation of growth and make it habitable. Now, this is 1983. 1983. Right now, it's 2025. We have the same problems today that we had in 1983 when we initiated the first resolution creating the enterprise zone. The intent of the enterprise zone was to take an area that succeeded in growth and make something happen. We have done cosmetic things like rehabbing the Warren building and tearing down not the Rumley Hotel, but the Spalding Hotel. We have done things, but we tear the facility down 40 years ago and we let it grow grass for the next 40 years. That is not the intent of the legislation that was created here in Michigan City. How many years ago? Since 83, 93, 2003, 13, 40, almost 50 years ago. We are backwards in this community in regards to economic growth. I see arguments. I see arguments over the color of the bicycle racks and so on, color of the garbage cans. The fact of the matter is, over these last 40 years, don't you think that there would have been viable jobs created or viable jobs retained over the 40-year period, knowing what this particular resolution was all about? You see other parts of the state of Indiana, go down to Marion County, who have a TIF district and so on. You don't see too many blighted areas in Fishers. The fact is, Michigan City and the intent of this legislation that I was part of went no place. And we've got people sitting in these offices in different degrees, spinning their wheels, saying, well, we can't talk about this because that's confidential information. And in the meantime, that confidential information goes elsewhere because we didn't jump on the opportunity that existed when it existed. This town is backwards.
And so Mayor Angie's her first year, and Tom Derby is in his second term. So he's 5 years and this has happened. I think Mayor Angie's going to get everything going and squarely going, because the hard thing about being mayor, any leader, any elected official, and even in the private world, is to get things to run. Because if you have to spend your day on picking up the garbage or getting junk cars out of the way, you can't spend any time in the real leadership role of getting things to move forward. If you're spending all your day chasing trivial daily things instead of having them run, which I think Tom Derby, in the first 3-4 years, he got to happen. So he spent his time leading things that need to be done, like the Civic and building new businesses and getting redevelopment in place, because that's where the mayor needs to spend the time. And I think Angie's got the first year. She's getting it under control. It should run. She shouldn't have to take 100 phone calls a day or wherever any mayor takes to fight things that should happen. Because, and in my impression, public or private world, if the CEO is getting a call about picking up the trash or cleaning up the garbage cans, then I don't need my employee to do it. If I have to do that, why do I have an employee to do it? We can get rid of that person, because that's not something I should be leading the private world or the mayor or the town, I should be leading to get the redevelopment and the new things to come here. Not just mean going out and asking for them, getting them to actually build. Shovels in the dirt, boots on the ground. And I think Mayor Angie's going to got that ear. She's getting it going. And in the next 2 or 3 years, just like Tom did, took him 4 or 5 years to get this machine really working, that yes, we start seeing building on these blighted spots that we just tore down and planted grass in. So now we need to actually build something on them. And that's where you see the rubber hit the road, when that mayor or that leader has got the system functioning and is moving on to getting things built and done. And that's what Michigan City needs. And I don't know why we haven't seen it in my lifetime, that the person ends up spending all their time on menial tasks, which need to be done. The police, the crime, the garbage, the cars, the yards, the blight, needs to be done. But is that where they need to focus their time? That's a waste of their time. They need to look at the future.
There's a need for housing in Michigan City, and just recently, Planning and Zoning spent 3.5 months determining the validity of the storm water runoff on an 8-acre parcel of ground to build houses. It only rains on an occasional basis, but yet hours upon hours upon hours of dialogue went into the retention ponds and water running off. If you take a topographical reading of the area that this project was all about, it is 10 foot higher than the level of Lake Michigan. Well, if it's 10 foot higher, don't you think water runs downhill, and storm water would have a natural flow down to Lake Michigan? But yet, hours and hours were spent on, where are we going to dig a retention pond to retain a 100-year flood so that Michigan City could move forward? Stupid thought. Stupid thoughts, and the only person that is not benefiting would be the potential home buyers, our tax base, and the development of Michigan City. We continue to put up these roadblocks after stumbling blocks, and the bottom line is, I believe if I was that contractor, I'd pick up my project and go elsewhere.
See, that's what I get. So the system has to function and work seamlessly. The leader needs to work on things that are going in the future. But it takes a gutsy leader to find out if this project should have taken days, let alone not more than a week. If we went months and months with this developer, the leader should go to their system that runs the system and says, "You're out. I'm done. I'm done with you. If it's going to take months to fight about this trivial thing that should have been taken days,
storm water retention,
we're done. We're moving on. I don't have the time for this. This developer doesn't have the time or the money for this. Goodbye. I will find somebody else." And it will not take them months. It will take them a couple days. Yes, it looks good. We've got an engineer. They designed it. We can approve this. Have a good day. Start building that thing. That's what happens in private and public world.
There was a situation down the road from my house on Ohio Street that Woodruff came in and dug a hole in the ground. They went down 15 foot into the sand before they discovered water. 15 foot down from Ohio Street, down into the ground. But yet, because of the language that's on the books here in Michigan City, the property owner who wanted to build an 8-unit complex had to set aside a portion of his property, a good portion of his property, for a retention pond. Now, if you've got the water table 15 foot below where you want to build the houses, and the basements you put in is like a crawl space. A crawl space was, let's say, 5 foot. That water table was 5 foot beyond the level of the substructure under the building that he wanted to build. But yet he had to jump through numerous hoops, and basically a good portion of that land that he could have built another unit on has been designated a retention pond. A retention pond over the water table, which is 15 foot below the ground level. Stupid stuff. and the laws that are on the books, again, are being adhered to by our building administrator. You know what? There's also a room afoot that individuals are prevented from cutting trees down on vacant property to build a house, and they need the approval of the city's tree board to be able to cut down saplings so that he or she or the company could build a home on the property.
No, it's worse than that. First, you have to get an inventory. You have to locate every tree on your property before they will even review it. I've been involved in a few of those. Not fun. Have you ever tried to locate a forest of trees on a map? Do you know what that takes? Do you know how many weeks you involved in delaying a project? Because I like trees just like anyone else. But we all know, and I'm not even a forester, I'm not even an arborist. We know if there's a forest, and this is where the forest for the trees saying comes in, we know if there's a forest, and you try to save some of the trees in that forest, and you knock all the trees out that are around it, the big trees in the center really can't handle it because they haven't been grown to handle the wind that the smaller trees were helping them avoid. So we save a couple trees, and then they fall down on the house that we tried to save. People love trees. We can plant new trees, and they'll grow up in 10, 20, 50 years, and they'll be nice trees, and they'll grow strong in the place that they are put.
There's a situation on my property. I've got 2 dead trees on my property. Do you know that if I read this correctly, because of this tree board administrator, that I have to go to him with a picture of a dead tree to inform him that I want to cut it down on my property? Mm-hmm. Does that really make sense?
Yeah. So again, it's hard to find the right leader in the public or private world that gets the system functioning well. And then they take their time and their experience and their talent, and they focus on the future and the growth of that private or public company and move it forward. And then it's even harder to find that person who the system, when they find the system's not working, to fix the system. And that means some people got to go. Some people got to go.
Going back to the stormwater retention on Tryon Road or that area. If the ditches were cleaned out, a normal flow of water would run down that 10-foot embankment into the Lake Michigan. If you don't know where Lake Michigan is, that's that big body of water that's just north of where we're sitting right now. Because I don't believe that the people, the powers to be, understand that we have this waterfront that we've got. They only focus in on a few half a dozen words that say that it must be done this way. There's no alternatives, according to our city fathers, to apply to. Is if it's written, this is the way we have to continue. Why can't we take into account that the city will grow if we have futuristic thinking individuals that could make the city grow? Going back to the sanitary district gets $500,000 a year to clean out ditches. I'm quite sure around Tinker's Dam area, there's standing water. There's standing water around Tinker's Dam that is roughly 6 foot higher than it is on Muir Road. There's a dam there that retains water. Eliminate that pond, eliminate that standing water, allow the water to flow down to Lake Michigan, and maybe there'd be no need to spend hours upon hours arguing about stormwater retention when God will make the water run down the Lake Michigan.
Mother Nature will let it flow through the White Ditch, and bless, the sanitary district, what was his name? Mike
Cuss?
Mike Cuss looked into cleaning out the city's portion of the White Ditch, and they got stuck and stymied in their regulations, and it cost so much money. So we stopped, and they don't seem to find a way to clean out their ditch because all that area, Tryon Road, Muir Area Road, all goes towards the White Ditch, which the County Drainage Board and Michiana Shores and the state of Michigan keep very well clean. But when you get into Michigan City, it's a problem because they can't find a way to clean out the ditch.
I will say this. First of all, Tinker's Dam, you got to say hacienda. because it did not
I was
see
thinking,
it.
who other than us
He
knows
didn't even
Tinker's
know what
Dam?
Tinker's
Hey, I'm a fossil.
Or Ronald Reagan came. Anyways,
Yes, where Ronald Reagan came along with Jimmy Stewart.
yeah.
Long time ago.
You dirty rat. Yeah, dirty rat.
If we bring in the kinds of jobs that will pay the salaries, and as long as we provide an environment for those people who are going to go outside of the city, outside of the county, in the Chicago area, South Bend area, one of those areas, and work, we will bring them in. People will do the job in terms of building the houses if they want to live here. That's what we're going to have to do. We have to train the people. And that's where you get into these technical schools to do the kinds of jobs. A friend of mine has a Mercedes. It's a 15-year-old Mercedes. Had a problem trying to find out where in the heck they could get that Mercedes fixed at. Now, it wasn't a powertrain, it was the electrical system. Man, we spent 3 hours calling around trying to figure out how we could get it accomplished. Mercedes finally came up with it in probably a job that on a U.S. car would cost $800–900. This one's going to cost about $2,000, but they'll get it fixed. It is a Mercedes. We've got to have people trained to work on these kinds of cars, Mercedes, Audis, and those kind, because we've got enough people here that have those cars that need to be worked on. And if you don't work on them here, you can go to South Bend, which takes about 3 months to get in.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Cherville, which takes another 3 months to get in, or you can go to Indianapolis. Now, in terms of us actually going somewhere, we're going to have to get these people trained to work on these kinds of cars, these kinds of vehicles. You will find, if you get that, you'll get a dealership here.
Going back to 1983, in this particular resolution, Section 2, the Common Council states its willingness to review recommendations of the Urban Enterprise Association for the waiver of local rules and regulations that are determined to have a negative impact on new development or redevelopment. We wrote that back in 1983, and you still got the same concept going today. Is that progress?
We hope.
We hope.
We hope.
But Michigan City has lost population since Pullman left, and that's what you're not taking into account.
Pullman was gone. Pullman was gone, yes, after Pullman left earlier. We're getting down to last minute.
1970.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, there have been people in the community that have been trying, and there are individuals who are of the mindset that there's no reason to have future growth in Michigan City. And that's a travesty.
It's going to grow because of our location. That's what you're not reading into this. It will grow just because of the location.
Read the resolution.
We got short order. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving.
I want to thank everybody for watching. Your input as to improvements or criticism of this program is greatly appreciated. Please contact Show's co-producers Bob Pollock, Dave Beeler, or Tony Hendricks. With your comments, you can email Bob at skrpollock@gmail.com, Dave at djbeeler1@hotmail.com, or Tony at emailhem@yahoo.com. Or you may address your ideas for any future shows to our one and only staff writer, who is definitely a pain in the neck today, Sarah Bellum. Showing our program will be Saturday morning at 10 a.m. and again Monday evening at 7 p.m. on Channel 99, and again numerous times throughout the week on Channel 99. Again, I hope to see you again sometime in the future. Happy Thanksgiving, and make it a good day.